Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another Kerfuffle Showcase. Really delighted today to have Simon here. Hello, Simon from FlatFair. How are you doing, Simon?
I'm all right, Simon. How are you?
Good. Bearing by, getting by. Luckily, Boris decided not to punish Manchester in quite the way that dirty Liverpool's been done. So I'm still allowed to enjoy restaurants and bars, which is the main thing. Albeit by myself, which isn't particularly exciting.
Do you wear your hat out?
I do. Even it's amazing. It's amazing how much social distance I get wearing this hat without any other means.
We should get some FlatFair hats and.
You need to. I'm disappointed we didn't manage to get the merch to you. Actually, that's normally.
I would have worn one. If you send me one, I will take a photo of me wearing one in different places. Maybe I can send you a few kind of sightseeing Instagram shots of me.
Essentially, my idea was always, we get enough merch out there, and then it's going to be a bit like, when you see these students nick a gnome or something and start taking photos from outside the Sydney Opera House or things like that. My biggest concern with the merch is one day I see it on Crime Watch.
A kerfuffle hat is the next traffic cone.
There we go. We're an edgy brand. We're not quite there.
Right.
Simon, could you just give us an overview, just so for our viewers can understand, in terms of obviously FlatFair's history, and crucially, of course, what's the main problem it's solving for the agents themselves?
Yeah, of course. So we're FlatFair. We've been around now for just over 3 years. We were founded by a gentleman called Franz Durr, who is an ex-JP Morgan banker, who moved to the UK in 2016 and put down a deposit on a flat, and then tried to move out with that flat and had to put down another deposit on another flat whilst he was waiting for his other deposit to come back. And he thought, so he's born and raised in Germany, and he thought that was just something that was a bit isolated to the UK lettings market, as something that he wasn't used to in terms of his background, and also was particularly clunky. So he looked to try and provide a technology solution to that issue. How can he use technology to try and pave a way for a tenant to move into a property without having to put down a 5-week deposit? But also provide landlords with better cover against the issues raised at the end of the tenancy, based around Tenant Fee Act coming in at that time, deposits reducing from 6 weeks to 5 weeks. So what we've ended up with as a product of FlatFair, which has obviously evolved tremendously over the last few years, is a way in which tenants can move into a property for paying 1 week's rent instead of 5 weeks' rent, which gives landlords 6 weeks worth of cover. We also have a top-up model that can be used on a traditional deposit, as well as our no deposit, which is called Boost, where landlords can pay a small monthly fee, probably the equivalent of what you pay to a Netflix or a Disney Plus, on a month-by-month basis to gain extra cover at the end of the tenancy. So, the journey's been very good. A year ago, in August 2019, we received $11 million of funding from Index Ventures, who are early investors in Facebook, Deliveroo, companies like that. So we're highly capitalized, highly motivated, and we're trying to take the UK by storm.
Well, we've certainly seen your name everywhere. That's fantastic, obviously, in terms of the profile of the company there. It always depresses me a little bit there. So that was essentially the German founder of the business, obviously, looking at what's broken, he feels, in Britain and saying we can do better. Is there anything they do that they don't do better than us?
Well, it's efficiencies for sure, yeah. There's lots of efficiencies in data, and the data is very interesting because we get to the bottom of a lot of deposit issues are data driven, aren't they? I mean, the whole fact of the matter is that if a tenant moved into the property and left without owing any money, then they would be irrelevant. There would be no need for them. So the data element of it, and also sort of post-COVID, is the fact that it's very clear that amount of money owed by a tenant on an average basis across the tenancies in the UK is going to run. And the thing for us is sort of getting across to landlords via agents and sort of talking at length to our partners is 5 weeks enough? In a modern post-COVID world, is 5 weeks enough? Because you've got tenants that can't pay. You genuinely got tenants that simply can't do that. Hospitality industry, numerous different working scenarios now. We know that unemployment is rising on a month-by-month basis. It's already 5.5% higher than it was in August. So we're seeing that play out over time. And what we're saying to landlords is that this is a time when you need to gain access to better protection.
Got you. And you mentioned obviously COVID there. How has that affected FlatFair in terms of the way that you've responded to the market?
Very, very strategically. I think that's the way in which we've approached the market post-COVID. We're very well aware that whilst this is a good time for us, and it is because it gets us front and center in terms of landlords' thoughts, we are dealing with partners across the UK that are dealing with different markets. And the volatility within the market itself right now is very, very interesting. For example, we have a number of London agents where the market's quite tough for them. And we have a number of agents across areas like Norfolk, Suffolk, Cotswolds, where they are unbelievably busy, the busiest they've been in 5 years. So that's very, very interesting for us in terms of how we orchestrate the way in which we support our partners based around the difficulties that they have. For example, on a lease-up basis, we've got a number of London agents we work with very closely on a lease-up basis because it's starting to pan out that no deposit advertisements on Rightmove, Zoopla, on the market.com, home search, portals like that are gaining more traction than they've ever done before. I know of an agent that I work with in South West London who recently had a tenant say to them the only reason they called about that property was because it had a no deposit attached to it. They were specifically looking for a no deposit property. And these things weren't the case 6 months ago. But it equally might not be the case in Norfolk or the Cotswolds. So it's about orchestrating and working directly with our partners to work out what the issue is for them.
And what do you think? Why do you think there has been that switch? Why is that suddenly? Because is it just one of those things? Finally, in terms of awareness, it's kind of it's registering in the public's mind, or is there another reason?
I think so. I mean, from your background, you know how important tipping points in agency are. Number one, you know how there's sort of leaders and followers and people who let things get in and things like that. And I think that we're kind of in that ground whereby no deposits are really bedding into the market, and they're bedding into the thinking that agents have on a day-to-day basis. So it's kind of, rather than something in the back of their mind that they think, oh, I've got to remember to talk about that, it's actually forming a general day-to-day cadence in the way they think about talking to a tenant about moving into that property. So instead of going, I forgot to talk to the tenant about no deposit, it's constantly on their mind, number one. And number two, I think more and more tenants are becoming aware of it. And we're also, getting past that threshold that agents were always concerned about, which was, well, what happens at the end of tenancy? So to begin with, it was always, great idea, but what happens at the end of the tenancy? We've had thousands of move outs now. And the system hasn't broken down, and I think it hasn't
collapsed, which was the fear, obviously, of everyone at that point. Yeah, I get that. Exactly.
Everyone kind of thought, oh, well, what are you going to do a year from now? What are you going to do 2 years from now? And I think that 3 years on, that's testament to it. And also, we have worked very, very well through COVID. So working through COVID again is another test against our business.
Absolutely, yeah.
And to go through that test, not just well, but with flying colours, is a very, it's not just a testament to FlatFair, it's a testament to all deposit alternatives. And we're very clear about that. We're very clear that we're championing deposit alternatives. We're not championing FlatFair on its own. We're other competitors of ours, and we're very pleased that they're doing well too, because it champions the industry that we're involved in.
Everyone can succeed on there, and it's the model that's changing and is the disruptor here, isn't it?
Yeah, there's room for Adidas and Nike in the world. There's room for Zoopla and Rightmove. There's room for a number of deposit alternative companies.
Well, as an Adidas man, I'd say there's no room for Nike, but then we're probably better off dealing with politics and religion.
Actually, they fought back in the day, didn't they? The two respective founders.
Yeah.
Oh, no, Adidas and Puma were brothers, weren't they?
They were particularly, yes. And if you want to have a fight, keep it in the family. That's the way to do it, isn't it? So Simon, what's really interesting there though is you're at these what I think obviously it seems there in terms of that adoption curve. Yeah, we're at that nice, exciting stage where we're beyond the early adopters, which is always a niche of kind of visionaries, if you like, without overplaying it. But actually now where it starts to just really get into that mass adoption phase. And that seems like where you're at the moment. So it promises to be an interesting, period for you.
Yeah, the next year is going to be very, very interesting. We're also incredibly big in build to rent. We work with a number of very big build to rent companies, Greystar, Lendlease, Places for People, Mainstay, Touchstone, Ascend, companies like that. So we're very, very big in that world, which is probably less obvious to people within the UK because there are certain people that deal with maybe the bigger corporate agents. We have a number of those. We work with Hunters, Spice of Heart, and lots of we have thousands of partners across the UK. But we're kind of big in different niches, which I think works well for us because ultimately our product is very flexible. Because we're not and we decided that from the very beginning. It was a conscious choice not to be an insurance product. So we could be flexible with the way in which we make offerings to different sections of the market. So if you're a landlord letting out your own units, then you need a certain type of product that suits what you're doing because you might do different types of lease-up methods. You might decide to buy the product from us and then give it away to the tenant for free. Whereas if you're running an estate agency chain, of course, that's not possible because you're dealing with thousands of different landlords. So that's where FlatFair really comes into its own, is that flexibility, that the way in which we can cater for different needs of our clients. And we run about 8 different models based around different needs of our clients.
Okay.
Which involves a very, very clever back-end tech system. And again, as we were founded as a tech business, that's we're able to do that because we've got a great product team. Our CTO is ex Candy Crush, which so that kind of shows the level to which we're producing our back end function.
So he's going to make FlatFair the most sticky platform around. if you start sending me out invites though on Facebook, I tell you what, that's when I'm going to start getting.
You have to get to level 4 before you can.
Yeah, I'm not paying for any more points. That's the only thing. And actually, what's interesting there though, because a lot of actually. Knowing my history, it's great when you've got just one model, isn't it? But then quite soon, reality and the commercials of the marketplace dictate that you need to have more. So to be able to cater for and have that flexibility inbuilt into the product and solution is vital, isn't it? If you're going to get to that next stage of adoption.
Yeah, and it's very, very similar to what you're used to, Simon. Very similar to the early stages of Repit. I remember when we met many years ago, it was about 15 years ago. Your ability to onboard a huge company, and then also your ability to deal with what I was at the time, which was a small 2-office agency in Southwest London, was very apparent and very kind of rewarding in the conversations that we had at the time. And I think that was Repit's strength back then, that they weren't pigeonholing themselves into, right, well, we're creating an off-the-shelf product and you can only do this with it, therefore it caters to that market. Or we're producing a very, very high cost, very manipulatable CRM that only suits this end of the agency. You were basically saying, right, well, if you've got 15,000 agents in the UK, we can cater to 15,000 agents. Massive strength, and we're trying to do exactly that. We're trying to say, look, if you're a one-office agency, we'd love to talk to you. If you've got 150 offices across the UK, we'd love to talk to you. You're a build-to-rent developer with one building. We'd love to talk to you. You're a build-to-rent developer with 50 million to spend across the whole of the UK, and you're doing a tax. We'd love to talk to you. And
yeah, that makes perfect sense. So, I mean, a lot of businesses will go and they will target a specific niche. You know, that niche marketing is a tried and tested approach there, you know, appeal to a certain demographic with a certain model. But of course, by definition there, the problem is that does limit you to that percentage of the marketplace. So you either start off with that view that you're going to either at least start or remain a niche player, or you go for the big goal, which is where it sounds, you know, you don't get that sort of funding without saying, actually, we want to go for the market as a whole here, do we? So that will, you know, to be able to get that backing, which gives you the resources to create that flexibility, that scalability, is where it's going to be the difference for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think you get that kind of funding by offering a bastardization of something that's gone before. You know, these people invest in companies that are new, they're fresh, they've got different ideas, and they're trying to solve specific problems with something that hasn't been done before. And that's essentially how we got our funding, was a belief that we've tried to skin the cat in a different way to the way in which other people are thinking it could have been.
Yeah. And how has stamp duty affected it at all in terms of as you see the market at all?
I think, well, obviously it's affected the sales market, and yeah. I know from my history in agency that the two never go hand in hand. I've never worked a market where sales was booming and lettings were booming at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, that perfect balanced market is just mythical, isn't it?
So our board meeting call back in August 2007 involved, can we run on lettings for the next 2 years, because I don't think we're going to sell anything. So, you know, are these calls kind of taking place in the other way across agencies in the country at the moment? With I do know that a lot of our partners are focusing on taking advantage of the SDLT holiday and what that means for their business. But equally as well, you know, post-COVID sales market is clearly a move from intense conurbation living into, well, the people that wanted to make the move to the countryside have been jolted into doing so quite quickly. So I think there's always an inevitability that some people want to make that move. And certainly where I am in Southwest London, I've got a number of friends that are always talking about when they're moving to the country. Yeah. And it just fast forwards that process, I think, the last few months.
Isn't that's the eternal tale in London, isn't it, when you're moving out, isn't it? It's just, you never manage to break the umbilical, though, do you?
Well, I'm not going, but there's a number of people that I know that it just makes them think, well, is there a better time to do it than now? Yeah. And make that move, which means I think you've got lots of pockets of intense. You know, I know that Sevenoaks, Tunbridge Wells, are having one of the busiest markets they've had in the last 10 years. But I also know that in Wandsworth, Battersea, Clapham, there's quite a heavy burden on 2-bedroom flats on the market compared to, you know, what there were a year ago. So it's that kind of pockets of market and volatility that, and I've not seen that before, because one thing we saw in the 2008 crash was a very binary scenario that the whole market was struggling or not. It was kind of, you know, that up and down effect, whereas now it is quite.
And you know, you just mentioned as well in that previous bit, you were talking about you didn't want to just come, and the founder of the business didn't just want to come out with another Me Too solution there. So with that in mind, what's been the biggest challenge as a business that you've had, and how have you managed to overcome that?
I think the biggest challenge we face is inertia to deposits as a whole, because in many ways, people see them as not being broken, but actually, and I think we'll start to see it over the next 6 months. Is well, how many instances are there where landlords' debt at the end of a tenancy supersedes the 5-week tenancy by a substantial amount? And I don't just mean, which is common in lettings. You do tend to find that either things go okay, or when they don't, they don't. Yeah. And that kind of, and a landlord probably within a business, certainly if I was a landlord and I was, you know, creating a 10-year plan for property, I would create within that plan one negative impact. So I would surmise that I would have between 3 and 3.5 tenancies over a 10-year period if I'm after my tenants well enough. And one of those 3 tenancies is I'm going to have a poor end of tenancy experience.
Yeah, that's
so
really good. Yeah.
Plan for the worst and hope for the best. It could be that all 3 are fine, but I think that I've done something significantly wrong if 2 out of 3 were bad. But that said, right now, I think that the same ratios will still exist, but when landlords have that one bad tenancy, that bad tenancy will be significantly bad. It will be 3 or 4 months worth of arrears, not 6 weeks. And what landlords have to think about is how they can protect themselves against that. And one of the things that we're most proud of in terms of the technology solution that we have to no deposits is that we still recover beyond the end of the tenancy debt. So if we cover 6 weeks in our no deposit scenario and the landlord is owed 18 weeks, we will establish that 18 weeks is due to the landlord through, be it through adjudication or be it through agreeing it with the tenant that that's what they owe. And then we will put the landlord back in pocket for their 6 weeks, but we will also continue to recover the remaining 12. And we're the only company in the UK that's able to do that. Right. And that's a very, very strong message that we need to get out there to landlords at the moment, that it's not just about the initial bit, it's about what happens thereafter. And those sort of catastrophic events are probably going to be larger than they were before, even with a good tenant. Because if a good tenant loses their job in COVID, they can be the best tenant in the world. If the money's not there, the money's not there.
Yeah. So you've got a whole cradle to grave approach, really, in terms of looking after the whole challenge there, rather than obviously just a little bit. And what else? I mean, obviously, actually, zero deposit's been in the news a fair bit recently, obviously in the last week or two. How does the no deposit from FlatFair differ from the other ones that are on the marketplace, apart from obviously that key element?
Well, the biggest 2 things is that we're a technology company from the ground up, and that we're not an insurance company. Yeah. And we rise and fall based around the amount of monies that we recover from tenants at the end. And I think that's the most important thing that landlords have to understand about FlatFair, as opposed to a day-to-day insurance model. And a day-to-day insurance model of anything, if you looked out your window and looked down your street and looked at your cars, your insurance on your street is based on your postcode and the car you drive. Yeah. And their job is to not pay out. Yeah. Your insurance companies have to mitigate the number of claims that they make. We don't need to mitigate the number of claims that we pay out to landlords. We need to make sure that we recover monies from tenants efficiently, because that's the technology that we have. And the technology that we use is based, it's our own. I can't go into the detail because it is our own stuff that we've worked for a long time on. It's very similar to that of a hotel. So when you go to a hotel and you check in and you swipe your card, and they take an amount off your card, and you stay in the hotel, have a beer at the bar, or you have a meal with your family, and then you leave the next day, that hotel can take that money off of that pre-authorization of your card.
I understand, yeah.
That same technology that we've managed to work into the letting cycle. And that is the letting cycle around length of tenancies, that is around expiration of card details, and numerous other things. Because we're not insurance, we're a discretionary model. We can also make commercial decisions about how we pay our landlords, why we would pay out, even if there are instances where, as we've spoken about before, that there's going to be an inevitability that some instances don't meet the criteria, so therefore the landlords aren't going to be reimbursed. We can make commercial decisions to reimburse those landlords, which is a real string to our bow.
Yeah, I can see that, absolutely. And what's the benefit of a no deposit option to all the other parties involved?
To an agent specifically, it's about efficiencies for me, and it's about not having to deal with sort of TDS and things of that nature. So they obviously save on the costings there. But one thing's for sure is that landlords who are advertising properties through agents are getting more inquiries on those properties at the moment. That is exponentially rising on a day-to-day basis. So one is a lease-up thing to the agent. in that if you're advertising a property with a no deposit, you're going to get more inquiries from tenants. And then also as well, it's the efficiency. So we have lots of tech add-ons where, so for example, the age-old way in which you negotiate the end of a tenancy with a tenant is via email. You email them with PDFs of quotes that come in, they email you back. It's sometimes linked to your CRM. I mean, you know from your time, property management CRM is tough. It's not.
It's not the prettiest part of the whole package, is it?
Sales is nailed. Property management CRM is mind blowing. So we have an end of tenancy portal where I liken it to sort of eBay, where the tenant and the landlord can offer and counter offer to each other, and all the evidence is collated for the end of tenancy through that process. It's a very slick way of the end of tenancy happening, which is very useful to agents. Obviously, there's the commissional element. We do work with our partners to provide them with rewards for selling our products. And obviously, there's the reputational element that the landlord is covered versus that eventuality. So kind of what we look at it as is that we know above and beyond 5 weeks the amount of money that landlords have gained from FlatFair that they wouldn't ordinarily have had access to. For example, we work with Spice of Heart, and we know how much money they've essentially found their landlords by being covered by FlatFair instead of being covered by a 5-week deposit. And that's a very strong message to the landlords on the pitch. So you're out there pitching to a landlord and say, right, if you work with me, I've got landlords that have been in X amount of debt at the end of their tenancies, and this is what we've recovered via FlatFair versus what you would have recovered via a 5-week deposit.
That's going to resonate, isn't it, really, incredibly quickly and easily with people. Yeah, I get that. And you mentioned there Spices. Could you give us a flavour of the kind of other agents and the size of the business, where it is now and where you think it's going to be?
So as mentioned, we deal with some massive global businesses in Lendlease, Greystar, companies like that. So our build to rent aspect of what we do is huge in terms of the number of units that we are dealing with on a month by month basis. At any one given time, we could be dealing with 100,000 units across the UK that have a FlatFair no deposit attached to them through our build to rent partners. And then from an estate agency perspective, Spice of Heart is one of our longest clients, our most loyal. We work with them very, very closely and have a great working relationship with them, a fantastic business. We deal with Hunters. Hunters are, again, brilliant franchise group. We've got Carrie, who we deal with there, and Dan Rafferty, who, you know, the attitude towards companies like ours is absolutely fantastic. And we deal with lots and lots of the medium agencies like CGT, Sowerby's, Beals. We just recently engaged with Martin Gerrard in London, who have 10 offices.
I've got Simon on next. Funny enough, he was on the phone to me earlier, demanding his blue M&Ms for appearing on the show. So what I'm hearing from this, though, in all honesty, Simon, is you've got some great, huge agents there. So scalability, tick. You don't have to worry about that, do you? Often, with businesses, sometimes you have to question, are they going to be able to keep up with the demands? Obviously, sometimes you can hit the wall there in terms of as a quick expanding business. But you're already hitting some of the very biggest businesses out there, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying it, some who have high expectations, high maintenance, like the aforementioned Mr. Gerrard there. So you are, as we said before, you're not getting pigeonholed into sort of one-office agencies or anything else like that. You're hitting the board across all different demographics.
Yeah, we deal with some great businesses. I mean, Martin Gerrard, CGT, Sowerby's, Beals, they're massive advocates of ours, and I'd be hugely complimentary about them as businesses as well. I mean, one of the things with from my world is that when, I've ran my own estate agency business. I worked for Savills for a number of years as well. And it was always something that kind of irked me that prop tech businesses were always, coming in to save your business, as if there was something wrong with your business. And one thing, there's nothing wrong with these businesses. These businesses are great businesses. And all we want to do is just help them be even better. It's not that there's anything wrong with them. So we're not the savior of the lettings market or anything of that nature. We're just an enabler.
Chin scratching techies like me telling us we have the solution to all their problems, isn't it? Yeah, the first generation of prop tech does have a lot to apologise for.
It's similar to, I've got a lot of respect for online businesses, huge respect for online businesses, but I was never fearful they would change the landscape of estate agency in the UK, because in the same way that, when Foxtons came along, Kinley Folk and Hayward in the early 80s as a rebellion against the mortgage companies that owned the Bradford and Bingleys, the Woolwich buildings, all these massive companies. Yeah. They were just finding a niche within a market that does evolve. But there's always a need for agency, and there's always a need for sort of people contact. And we are just an enabler to that. And there's a company called Right Now Residential down in London, Peter Murphy, who I deal with a lot, a great business. And they push us and we push them. And that's kind of our mentality is that we want to work with people who love us and we love them back.
Yeah, who can genuinely partner with, aren't going to. One of the biggest frustrations you see from suppliers and prop tech in particular is where people take on the solution, but then from that point on, they almost keep them pushing back against the recommendations. It's like, you do need to work with a company on its, on the best way to deploy things. It doesn't mean you have to, change your whole philosophy on stuff. But if there's really no point getting on board with a proposition if you're then going to avoid every bit of expert advice that they talk about best practice afterwards, is there?
Yeah, completely. And for us, it's, what we always absolutely push to anyone we speak to is that we don't feel that no deposits in the short term will eradicate cash deposits. That's not our philosophy. That's not where we're coming from. What we do think is that there is a vast proportion of tenants out there, probably 99% of them, who would like the option.
Yeah.
Whatever option they take, whatever choice they make down to them, but having that choice, it's like anything in life. The modern world is about choice. In everything that we do. If everyone turned around to us and said there's one phone and it's an iPhone, I think there'd still be people that go, well, I have another choice and that's no phone. The human psychology is they want a choice. And certainly in a modern Western society, we need to have that choice and also trust the choice. Trust is imperative. And we work very, very closely with our agents to build that trust, because that's something I know that agents, they're kind of very prop tech savvy now. They're very savvy on the whole in terms of companies that are trying to build their company around their world. E.g., your benefit is a direct result of my benefit, but it kind of goes hand in hand. And you have to build trust with agents, and you have to get them to understand that we exist on the back of them and vice versa. But at the same time, we're only doing what we're doing hand in hand with them to actually make their service better to their tenants and also to their landlords. And I think we strike the right balance on that front. I hope we do.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more with you. And looking out there, when you're actually looking at the marketplace itself, what's the biggest objection you actually get from landlords? And has that changed over time? Are they how do you overcome it?
I think the largest objection we get is that landlords are very used to what they've had. It's not troubled me. I've let my property out for 20 years. I've not really had an issue. On the flip side to that, when landlords do have an issue, we do come starkly into focus, because I think then when you've got a landlord that's had an issue, they're much more receptive. But equally as well, I think that viewpoint is changing, and certainly post-COVID, there's been a much deeper thought process from landlords about what they can do to protect themselves against these eventualities. There's perhaps a mentality that do you need to rebuild your building after an earthquake in the same way that you did before, because lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place? So do you need to robustly preserve your flat or your property against a pandemic when we've just had a pandemic and won't be one in the future? Well, there will be other things. There will be other processes that come along. Section 21s and that non-evictions. I think in terms of the eviction process, the post-COVID world will look very different to what it did pre-COVID. In terms of what landlords are able to do and what they're not able to do. There was already lots of talk around changing the way in which landlords try to evict their tenants, and certainly the more pushing towards use of Section 8 notices rather than Section 21. So we feel that landlords securing themselves in a number of ways. For example, if a landlord came to me and said, okay, right, should I use a no deposit instead of an RLP? Should I use your boost product instead of RLP? No, you should get RLP, boost, and a no deposit, because that means that you are covered in the best way possible.
Yeah. And it's like you're talking about one of these challenges keeps coming back to this same point, really, in terms of inertia, doesn't it? I always got very frustrated, actually, not for the people who said no to me, in my repeat days. It's funny, isn't it? As you mature, you actually really love the people who actually give you an honest no. It's the ones that won't see it, that won't actually, because actually you do need to live and breathe these products to understand the full benefit of that. So if you can get to that stage, that's why we obviously encourage everyone to have a really, really, really good look and do your due diligence. But it strikes me again, coming back, actually there's an opportunity in this whole lockdown period process there, because people are fundamentally challenging every element of what they do at the moment in process and procedure, isn't there? So I think you will definitely benefit from that, won't you, if people reassess the new world?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I tell the story a lot to my team, but I remember being 19 in an office, and the gentleman, I always forget his name, but the gentleman who founded Find a Property, he used to go around agents on a fold-up bike, and he'd go into offices, and it was 1999, and he came into an office, and he said he started speaking to the director of the business that I was working for at the time. And this director shouted to the back of the office, said, "Si, do you think that people will use the internet to look at property anytime soon?" And I shouted back, no. Why would anyone do that? People want to come into an office and fan details across a desk and spend their estate agent. So yeah, how wrong was I on that? But this was 1999, and this was Find a Property. And at what point did Rightmove, which obviously the Find a Property amalgamated to, at what point did they reach the point of 50% market share of X number of hits a day? They weren't a £1.2 billion business overnight. It took time, and a lot of that was inertia. And the same happened to Zoopla. Glowbricks was something that came along with free listings, and they sort of went off and then took over. And I really feel like no deposits are in that zone right now, that people heavily underestimate. Once tenants begin to understand, and also as well, from a tipping point perspective, a tenant is not going to go back to a traditional deposit from no deposit.
No.
Once they're in it, they're in it. Because there's benefits for remaining, number one, and certainly there's benefits for remaining with FlatFair in terms of your next tenancy, for reductions to tenants who move on to other properties and take a FlatFair membership again. So I think that that's something that will just increase over time. And like anything in any sort of macro or microeconomics, once they reach certain tipping points within a journey, the next step is far easier to overcome. And when across the UK, I think we're only sort of 6 months to a year away from some significant growth on that front. Okay,
and what if an agent wants to go down the traditional deposit route? They have that. They do have that available with you, though. Yeah.
Yeah. So if they use a traditional deposit, they can add our boost product to a traditional deposit. Again, we're the only company in the UK that sort of has found a way to utilise no deposit thinking and add it to the traditional deposit world. And what that means is a landlord can add 6 weeks worth of protection to a traditional deposit for this monthly fee that I spoke about. So, which is in our average, it's around £9.99 a month on the basis of our average fee across the UK. So our average rent across the UK is around about £250 a week. Okay. So it's very affordable. It's a sort of a standard product that we can add on top of a traditional deposit. And what the landlord then gets access to is 6 weeks worth of damage and dilapidations cover on top of the 5 weeks, allowing them to use the 5 weeks in its entirety for any arrears that they might have. Again, post-COVID, a really, really good idea for landlords to be using that.
And the key thing is then that just gives you the complete kit bag, doesn't it, really, as you said, in the way that, you know, you're talking about, you can go out to whole of market with FlatFair, and you don't have to then become you don't have to become an advocate or totally focused on one particular way, because you've got every option there and it's just for the client to decide. Yeah,
absolutely. So we know that from even the best uptakes that we have, it's normally around 40 to 50% of the tenancies that our agents do, they choose to pick a no deposit. So there's always a 50% left of the market. And all we've simply thought of is, okay, well, how can we enter that market? How can we talk to the landlords that turn around and say, I really want to do a 5-week deposit? Because as well, you know, average age of landlords in the UK, you know, one of the benefits of us being who we are is we are a tech business, but you do need to be tech savvy to use it. So there's even some landlords in the UK that go, well, I don't really want to log on and do this and do that, do the other. Take a cash deposit. Okay, but do you want 11-week cover versus 5 weeks worth of cover? Oh, yes, I'd be very, very interested in that. Will that conflict my RLP? No, you can have an RLP as well. And what I kind of liken it to, you know, if you move into a really nice new house and you spend a lot of money and you fit it up, do you put a average lock on your front door, or do you put a Yale lock on, 2 chubs and a couple of deadbolts to make sure that it's really secure? Do you put window locks on your windows? And it's that kind of thing for landlords right now. It's not a one-stop shop anymore. It's making sure that you've covered all bases.
And any other benefits of Boost there for the agents or the landlords themselves?
Well, I mean, we actually add Boost to a no deposit as well. So the benefits to the agent is double selling and obviously double the rewards thereafter. And benefits to the landlord is simply that, making sure that if they've got their RLP, they've got their Boost, and they've got either a no deposit or a cash deposit, then they're protected up to the hilt, even via excesses, even anything and everything that's should be covered within that. And one of the biggest things about Boost that we're really proud of is we found a way to pay out the very next day after charges are established and agreed. So if, for example, through the traditional deposit route, you go to TDS and TDS say, right, this is what the tenant owes, this is that, and that's 7 weeks worth of debt to the tenant. There's 5 weeks that the landlord takes. There's 2 weeks left over. That gets sent over to us. We see that it's been agreed and established via the TDS, via adjudication. We will pay that out the very next day. So this is something, again, that from landlord research, we know that they want speedy payouts. They don't want to be hanging around for things. They want to get on with life. They want to use that money, refurbish the property, get it back on the market, get a new tenant in. We also know
that's just the dynamic of the world today, isn't it? Speed is just becoming ever more important to them. They don't want to be hanging around for it. So I can understand why that's been received quite so well.
And we know that RLPs take time. So if you're going through an RLP process, it's a legal process, it's an insurance policy, there's big companies out there doing it. They're not going to solve that overnight. So we're a secondary product to that, if you like, a way of landlords getting access to speedy money, recompense quickly, and it's all about the established and agreed charges at the end of the tenancy.
And how's this been received by the agents, both new clients coming on board and new existing clients?
A lot of the new clients that we've got over the last, we've had our busiest quarter in the history of the business in terms of new signups over Q3. So a lot of those have come from hearing about Boost, and also wanting access to a no deposit has been a common theme as well. So whereas previously we go out to agents and say, hey, we're FlatFair, we do a no deposit. Oh, what's a no deposit? We're actually reaching a point now where people are coming to us and saying, hey, I've heard about your no deposit, I've heard feedback, can you give me some more information about it? Which has been a very recent, that's been a Q3 change. So that tipping point has been reached. And also combined with Boost, the two products sort of going hand in hand, they're very, very intrigued about how it's going to work. And we also released a third product during lockdown called Resolve, which is, again, has been sort of quite well received by agents out there. Resolve is a way of landlords, agents and tenants formulating a legally binding agreement within a software system, an online software system that agrees between the tenant, the landlord and the agent what a rental holiday may look like, or a rent deferment. So if you have a tenant that says, look, I can't pay this amount of rent, previously, you might make a note on your CRM, you might just say, oh, look, the tenant's agreed to pay 500 instead of 750. Then our agents can use Resolve for free to actually make a legally binding agreement for that rental deferment. And that's actually been taken up by communities and government. So communities and government are currently recommending that tenants and agents use Resolve, which we're really proud of.
Yeah, that's a real coup. That, I mean, I was going to ask you the commercials, but just to be clear, that's free for your existing clients on the other services.
It's free for anyone. It's
okay.
Free for anyone. So we're thinking of monetizing it, but we fundamentally believe that it's something that in this current state of a situation that anyone should and could get access to, and it's a very, very efficient system. We put an enormous amount of effort into it, and it's
I think you've cut up there. Hello, Simon, are you there? Hi, Simon, you there?
Did I just lose you there, Simon?
Yeah, sorry, you just cut up just for a second there. Just lost you at the very end.
Okay, yeah. So Resolve is a very good way of us legally putting in place an agreement between the tenant and the landlord. And what we also do is, I mentioned to you earlier, our recovery methods is we also agree with the landlord that we will help recover any monies owed to the landlord at the end of that tenancy if they alert us to the fact that that tenant hasn't agreed to the payment plan.
Cool. And so, I mean, Simon, cutting to the chase, how do people sign up to, obviously, FlatFair's no deposit and Boost? How long does it take to get started? What's the onboarding process?
It doesn't take very long to get started at all. We've worked very heavily on that. I think when we first started up, it was quite arduous. There was lots of things that we were learning around ASTs and legalities and all that sort of thing. We've really honed down on that over the last 6 months in terms of the way in which people can onboard. They can end-to-end onboard with us via our website. Just go onto the website and just sign up to FlatFair. It takes all the relevant details, and you can actually sign up to our terms through that. That's kind of the basics and the easy things for agents to do. The next steps in terms of training is the bit that we focus very, very heavily on. We have a great training and onboarding team. I've got a great bunch of relationship managers who and regional heads who work tirelessly with our partners to get them understanding what we do. We used to, obviously, pre-COVID, would do loads of office visits. We'd be constantly in people's offices. We're now doing that all via webinars and also thinking of a bit like you're doing now, thinking of new and a bit more interesting ways. So rather than just back and forth on a video, gamifying our onboarding procedure, fun quizzes, all the stuff that gets people kind of out of the what I call Zoom fatigue. Which I think
it's a very real thing, though, isn't it? I mean, it was interesting talking to, seeing so many people talking about the new normal and everything else and Zoom. And look, to a huge degree, obviously, it's changed the world forever. But there's also that, the minute we came out of lockdown, people wanted to just see each other again, didn't they? It was like, just Zoom after Zoom at the end of 8 hours. It can be a little bit challenging.
Yeah, it can. And also as well, when we used to visit the offices and have time with the negotiators, and you could sit one-on-one with them at their desks, they'd ask you questions. And we all know what life is like. You'd ask a question one-to-one. Very different to asking, a question on a 40-person Zoom call with your area manager on a call, and you tend to be quite quiet when people say, has anyone got any questions? So again, we're finding ways around that, making sure we're actually taking that principle and finding the time to reach out to negotiators, and also working out what's the state of each person's business, because each business right now is operating very differently to the way that they were 6 to 9 months ago. And we have to adapt to that. We have to alter the way we do things to make them feel comfortable. And it's important that we do that. And that's our primary focus.
Cool. And you mentioned before, obviously, you keep making the point that you're not just, you don't want to be perceived as an insurance company, that, this is you're a really a talented a tech company with a lot of resource, obviously backing you up and everything else there. I mean, I did see a result of that was you were talking about recently, the integration with Goodlord. Do you want to just talk to us about how that works?
Yeah, I mean, again, very, very pleased that Goodlord selected us. Goodlord are a company really on the march. I know Costas from the same way that, I know you from estate agency days. Yeah. And they're just a great business that, again, kind of one thing I love about Goodlord is their attitude to their agents kind of post-lockdown was very positive. It was very supportive. They've really pushed on. And we sort of found a very, very much a synergy between what we do and what they do. Basically, at the moment, we are the preferred supplier to them in terms of their flow. So during their flow, in the process of doing a let, a negotiator, admin person, whoever it may be, will get to a drop-down box that says deposit, and they'll be able to select traditional deposit or FlatFair. And if you select FlatFair, then that creates an API link with our process with Goodlords. And it's very, very, very easy to use. We're working hard on it, even more efficient than it is already. And we have some new releases of it coming up over the course of the next few months. But right now it's working really, really well. And a lot of the partners we've got, so Martin Gerard was one. It was a Goodlord and FlatFair alliance that created that sign up. So yeah, we're really loving working with Goodlord at the moment.
Excellent. And you haven't stopped there. You've been busy, guys. Obviously, you've also doubled down and gone with home search as well. Just talk us through what the benefits for the agents are going to be there.
Yeah, so I met Sam Hunter from Home Search 6 or 7 months ago. Again, lots of synergies between the companies, sort of slightly different from our synergies with Goodlord, but more, culturally in the way in which we work and the way in which Home Search work. And we just found a sort of a mutual ground in the sense that they're trying to escalate partners, we're trying to escalate partners. Yeah. And what we basically do is that anyone who signs up to FlatFair and our Home Search offer at the same time is that we will pay for a year's subscription to Home Search's Pro product. Yeah. If they become a FlatFair member. Very straightforward, no catches. It's just a straightforward thing. And what's in it for us is we get a really good partner. What's in it for Home Search is that they move people from free listings to paid listings, but there's no burden to the agent. And the agent genuinely gets two benefits. They get a benefit of becoming a FlatFair member, and they get a benefit of becoming a Home Search member for free when it would cost them £155. And Home Search is a really great business. So
Sam's got a fantastic, he's a great guy himself. Obviously, in the business, there's just one of those definite ones to watch. So I think that's a pretty exciting tie between the pair of you. And do a take from this, we're obviously that you see these partnerships and integrations as a key strategy going forwards.
Yeah, I definitely think that, because I really do. I do think that there's a new wave of estate agency coming, and I think supporting the people around it and being open to discussions and open to relationships and sharing information. I know that you've always had your views on APIs and people gaining access to various things. And we're very open on that, in that we will never hide anything. We'll never not align with people. And the more people that we can partner with, the more that we can provide a holistic support for an agent. If an agent turns up and goes, right, out of the box, this is what we use Good Lord, we use tech, we use Home Search, and we go, you're right, well, we work with them, no problem.
Yeah. This
is where we kind of want to be.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be rocket science, really, should it? I mean, ultimately, give the public what they want, and it's just an obvious one in terms of making plays. Of course, the challenge from a lot of tech companies is just making that happen. But at least now that is happening. But there's still a certain foot dragging that goes on. You can see a lot of people saying, we're going to open things up, and it doesn't quite happen as quickly as you expect it to. So it needs companies like yourself, Home Search, to be pushing and keep making sure that these companies deliver on that promise that they are going to genuinely open their doors up.
Yeah, it's about building trust, and it's about setting this all out from the very beginning for us, in that we want to do whatever we possibly can do to make the agent's life as easy as possible. There's no point us going into an office and saying, use FlatFair, and they say, okay, well, can I integrate FlatFair with our systems? No, you can't. We'll never let you do that. It's not where we're coming from. It's a lot of heavy lifting involved. You can't do everything at once. We're very thoughtful about, what we do, when we do it, and how we do it. But our ultimate aim is to try and integrate with as many companies as we possibly can within reason over the course of the next few years.
Excellent. Well, any budding suppliers that think you've got a symbiotic relationship there, potentially drop Simon a line directly, or drop me a line, and I'll happily pass on the details. And you mentioned earlier, Simon, you were talking about obviously wanting to deliver revenues as well back for the agents, and I believe you've got a nice deal for our Kerfuffle members as well. Do you want to just give a bit of an overview on that?
So we're very, very pleased to be working with Kerfuffle, and we will be doing all we can to make sure that we push Kerfuffle as hard as we can. We will enhancing our revenue share over the course of the relationship with anyone that signs up to us via Kerfuffle. So it'll be 20%, which is more than we usually do. So we really want to push that. Very, very, we're very proud that I know that you're very thoughtful about who you partner with and who you don't. So that's really, really good for us to be able to do that.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, what I love about these deals is, it is doubling down. You thought about this deal in terms of it's clearly going to work hand in glove. If the agent's making more, you're making more, and we can give you the platform for that. So thank you very much for doing that. We're really pleased to have you on board. I certainly know, obviously, I don't think anyone could ignore FlatFair over the last couple of years, because obviously you've been making such a noise, but I understand certainly a lot more than it did at the start of that as well. And look, we're obviously going to want to develop this theme out over the coming months, talk to some of your existing clients, and really keep the news stories going. So, Simon, thank you once again for obviously coming on today. Anyone who's interested, please reach out to Simon and his team directly, Annalise, or we can obviously go to the page, FlatFair page on Kerfuffle itself, see further information about them there. And as I said, we are delighted to be working with you guys and over the months ahead.
Likewise. Thank you very much, Simon. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Have a great day. Thank you all. Cheerio.
Bye.